Hi, my name is Elaine Evans. I am an extension educator at the University of Minnesota, and I am sharing a resource with you from our Pollinator Education Toolkit. I'm going to be talking about our Rare Minnesota Bees poster. So this is one that will be printed and set out to people who have applied and been accepted for the physical toolkits, and it will also be available digitally to everyone. And I am just doing this presentation to explain some more about some things that are on the poster and give you some guidance about it. It may eventually turn into a larger slideshow presentation with identification information, but that needs a lot more detail than actually what is in this poster. So this poster, the Rare Minnesota Bees, is intended to get people interested in looking for what bees they can find. So we're hoping to get people out there looking to see if they can help us find these rare bees, take pictures of them, and share them with us so we can learn more about what's going on. So the pollinator toolkits are something that you can get more information about at the Bee Lab website. So umn.edu/blab. And there is a section there about pollinator ambassadors where you can find out more about these toolkits that I'm talking about, which are intended for educators to help increase pollinator education and interest. So on this Rare Minnesota Bees, the first one we're talking about here is the Rusty Patch Bumblebee, which people may have heard about. It is our Minnesota state bee and is also the only bee in the continental U.S. to be protected as an endangered species currently. And there are a lot of other bees that people confuse with the rusty patch bumblebee. People get excited to find an endangered species, which it is still common in some parts of the state, especially around the Twin Cities. It's pretty commonly seen. But there are some other common bees to look for. So one of the big ones is that it's commonly mistaken for are the tricolored bumblebees. So these are pretty common in the northern half of the state, but they have a very different color pattern. For the rusty patch bumblebee, they have their first two segments of the abdomen are yellow, and then they have this rusty patch in the center. They also have this kind of T-shape of black hairs on an otherwise yellow thorax. So the tricolored, they have this kind of T-shape. It's a lot more distinct than on rusty patch. They also have some orange, but it's in a different pattern. So their first segment is all yellow, then there's two orange segments, then another yellow segment. Brown-belted bumblebees are also confused because they have this belt. The brown belt is also kind of rusty, but for them, they have yellow on the first segment, and then that rusty brownish swoop that they have is bordered by black on the other side, whereas on rusty patch, it's bordered by yellow on the other side. The half-black bumblebee has the first two segments are yellow, much like rusty patch, but it doesn't have that little T-shape, and those hairs really are all yellow. So sometimes in a photo, it'll look like you can kind of see through and see a darker part, but if you look at it in a different angle, you'll see that they are actually all yellow hairs. Red-belted bumblebees are highly variable in their color patterns, but none of the color patterns really match with the rusty patch bumblebee, but they do have, some of them have orange hair, some of them don't. But just knowing the color pattern on the rusty patch, you'll be able to pick those guys apart. We wanted to highlight a couple other bee species to look out for. The yellow banded bumblebee is another bee that's in decline, and we're looking for more information. It still can be fairly common in pockets up in northern Minnesota and in other parts across the US. And this one has a couple bees that look a lot like it. So if you're looking at these color patterns, they look really similar. But one thing to look for is this fringe of yellow hairs at the back of the abdomen that are not present on these other bees that look really similar. If you're getting to know the bumblebees in your area, these guys are also quite a bit smaller than these typically are. We have another bumblebee, so we've got a lot of bumblebees here, but this one is a different kind of bumblebee called a cuckoo bumblebee, where they don't make nests on their own, but instead they go in and take over nests of other bees. This is possibly our rarest bee that we have in Minnesota. Hasn't been seen here in probably 20 years. And one of the reasons why that's happening is because they prefer to go into nests of the rusty patch and the yellow banded. So since those bees have been in decline, these bees have been in even more severe decline. And these guys' ID is a little bit tricky, but the cuckoo bees tend not to have a lot of hair on their abdomen. So if you see a bumblebee without a lot of hair, they don't have pollen baskets because they don't collect pollen. They just go in and take over the nests of other bees. So basically, if you're seeing bees without a lot of hair on the abdomen and with similar kind of color patterns, taking pictures is something that'll help us figure out what's going on. We wanted to include a bee besides bumblebees, so we also have information here about oil bees. So this is a genus of bees called Macropus. And to find them, you need to first find these flowers, yellow loose strife flowers. The genus of the flowers is Lysomachia. And these are specialists that only visit those flowers. And instead of collecting pollen, they collect oil from the flowers to feed their young, which is why they're called oil bees. So first, look for yellow loose strife flowers, which can be found in typically close to wetlands. And then look for these medium-sized bees that are shiny and black, that have long hairs on their back legs, and take pictures and share them with us so we can figure out where they are. So again, we have a couple of resources where you can share these photos that you're taking, either on iNaturalist or on Bumblebee Watch. And those are both available either as apps on your mobile phones or other mobile devices, or they're also available as websites, so you can take pictures, come back home, use your desktop computer to upload those findings and find out what you had. So that is the basic story with the rare bees of Minnesota. And we hope that you find this resource helpful and that you're able to encourage people to get out there and look for more of these pollinators.